Hello, my crafty friend, and thank you so much for tuning in to today's junk journal flip through video. This is a different kind of video for me because I'm not sharing with you something that I've made to sell. I'm sharing something I made to keep. So this was a gift I made for myself last October as I was preparing to go on a very spontaneous mini trip to California. I wanted to bring a journal with me, but I didn't want to bring just a typical white paper journal. I wanted to bring a junk journal, and my idea was that way while sitting in the airport, waiting in the hotel lobby for my friend to come meet me, waiting backstage of the show I was going to be on, I would be able to document my process and save little bits of ephemera while honoring my craft. So yeah, I finally made myself a little junk journal after, over a year of making these books for others. If you're one of my regular viewers, regular subscribers, you would have heard me saying that I'm going to do a full flip through of my giant journal that I'm calling a hoarder's book because I'm using it to save samples of all my favorite fabrics and things. So that is still coming. Don't worry, I haven't scrapped the idea or changed my mind. I'm just waiting until that book feels more finished before I share it in a final flip through video. But for now, here is my personal travel journal. Oh, and this beautiful piece you might be admiring in the corner here is a necklace that my Auntie Marilyn made that she gave me for Christmas this year. And I love to show off my jewelry when I do flip through videos, but I don't usually show my face. You can't really see my necklaces, so I thought I would just put it here to show just that stunning beadwork that she did. Isn't it cool? It's got kind of like a mythical Celtic knot vibe in her hair flowing down the sides, and she reminds me of, I would say, like a Disney queen, but a good Disney queen, not an evil one. Anyhow, so I made the cover out of an upcycled journal cover from the company Paper Blanks. One of my friends is the creative director at Paper Blanks, so I got quite a nice little haul of journal covers, but I wanted to make it customized. I wanted to fill it up like a junk journal with my own goodies. So inside, I lined the book with this beautiful space book page. So it's a view of Earth seen from above. And I made a pocket out of a beautiful screen print of Lord Ganesha. He's the remover of obstacles. And so I like to include a picture of him in all my personal journals, because I feel that he will take away whatever obstacles, he'll remove whatever's holding me back from fully expressing myself. So for this book specifically, it was important for me to include Ganesha because the reason I was being flown to LA was to appear on an episode of Dr. Phil where he was talking about the dangers of cults. And so because I'm a cult survivor and I've been very public about my escape and what I went through in that nefarious organization, it was important to me to have Ganesha's protection so that I would say the right things and not freeze up, not get scared. And so Lord Ganesha protecting the planet is my front cover piece. In that pocket, I put two of my favorite Victorian ephemera cards. So these are pieces I salvaged from a Victorian scrapbook. You may have seen this image in a lot of my other journals because I like to print it on cardstock and use it, especially in my sea-themed books. It's just so beautiful. And then here's my first couple of souvenirs. So I stayed at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel and kept the coasters from the room as ephemera pieces. I think I'm going to actually use these in my crafts as templates whenever I have to draw or cut a circle. And so I'm probably going to use those to trace. And the ship cards, I'm going to write on the backs of those at some point, so I will use them for journaling space. I haven't filled this in yet. I'm going to do that off camera. I deliberately wanted to wait until I've done a flip through just because I don't want to share my phone number, address, and email address with everybody on the internet, just to keep safe. But I included this, which I pulled out of a thrifted book, so that if ever, God forbid, I misplace my journal, if somebody finds it, they'll be able to return it. And I absolutely love cats, so good that that was on the other side. This doily was from one of my thrifting trips with my mom and my auntie, so it's personally special. And I kept no real theme for my book. I decided to just use stuff that I liked. So I found this beautiful picture of a Russian Orthodox cathedral in one of my art history textbooks. And I just kind of stapled it into a page showcasing just maps. Like I said, just random stuff that I pulled out of art history books. It's never too late to right the wrong. I love the sentiment on that Victorian card, which is why I stuck it down as a tuck spot. I put a picture of the goddess Saraswati. She is the goddess of wisdom, learning, creativity, and creation. And so I also love to include her picture in all of my personal journals so that I stay connected with the divine flow and don't get writer's block or creative block. It's blank on the other side, so like as with the other things in the journal, I will eventually use them for journaling. A couple of other cool Victorian calling cards. I love the sleeve decoration on this one, and I absolutely adore the snake bangle on that one. Like, doesn't that look like a contemporary piece of jewelry? It's cool with jewelry trends, have things that were old come back again. This blue lace pocket is a piece of lace that my grandma gave me. And into that pocket, I've tucked some pages from the French architecture manual that I've shown in other videos too. I wanted to keep these particular pages for my own personal hoard because I love how it gives a list of all the saints and their corresponding feast days. When I showed that to my grandmom, she told me that my granddad loved paying attention to which feast day it was and that he made that a part of his personal faith practice. So even though I was born and raised Catholic but became Hindu in later life, and I still identify most with Hinduism, I thought it was nice in my personal journal to keep a little piece that reminds me of my heritage, my French heritage, and my Catholic early childhood connection. And then why I chose this page out of a art history textbook is that the Venus of Willendorf is on it. This ancient statue was actually found in one of the oldest prehistoric burial sites on the planet. And so she's one of the very first goddesses worshipped by early humanity. Why I think that's particularly cool is that as a crystal healing energy, gemstones sort of a nerd, I could nerd out on crystals and stones forever. There was actually a piece of moldavite found alongside this goddess. And you don't usually hear about that in, art history textbooks, because probably to most art historians, that's not a very significant detail. But to me, it's very cool. It's very cool that the goddess worshippers of old also recognized the significance or the healing energies radiated by the stone of moldavite. Check out my other YouTube channel if you're interested in that kind of stuff, because I've done many videos about the extraterrestrial connection to the stone moldavite. But anyway, this is just a cool little collection of architectural papers in French from 1912. I've left them intact. I'll probably use them in the future, making more scanned copies and using them kind of like as a template for other journals I work on. but I've kept the originals of a lot of my favorite things for myself. This is another Victorian card. It's just so pretty. It shows a girl reading a scary story by candlelight at night, and on the back it talks about ghost stories. This I wanted to include in this specific journal because the trip was on October 30th, so it's just a little nod to the Halloween season. It's in a coffee dyed envelope that I made into a tuck spot and journal page. And then I stuck another cool card into the pocket of this envelope page. So yeah, I made my first journal entry of the trip on this page here, and it's about a cool synchronicity that the Dr. Phil show put me up in the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel of all the different hotels where I could have been put. And why I found that so cool is that one of my favorite spiritual books of all time is called Star Signs, and it's written by the late great astrologer Linda Goodman. And in that book, her spiritual life takes a really crazy turn for the mystical when a man randomly knocks on her door and tells her that he has the answer to some questions she's been asking. And amazing synchronicities follow. She has a powerful awakening. She starts to believe in magic in a new way, like beyond what she had believed in before. And as it turns out, that sacred encounter that sparked the writing of my favorite book, Star Signs, happened in the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. She stayed there. She's written a number of books there, including a big portion of Star Signs. She met her future husband there. She just had some really profound personal experiences in that hotel. So I found it really amazing that all these years later, that's where I got to stay. So I did some journaling to connect with Linda Goodman. I brought that book with me to read when I had the chance, and it was just really, really cool connecting with that energy. I bought some postcards while I was there and decided to just write down what I was doing. So one with a day scene and flowers, one with a night scene and stars. I'm not going to show you what I wrote on the postcards because it's very personal, the stuff that I was talking about. But if you're into junk journals and you wonder how you can use the ephemera that's in your journal, just do it like that. Like, have a postcard, but write a letter to yourself to remind you of what you did that day. And you don't have to get fancy. I've kept it in the plastic sleeve just because I like to keep the sparkles from getting all over the place. And then the back card is a cool bonus gift. The lady who owned the gift shop included one extra card. So 2016, the year of the monkey, just fun. The TCL Chinese Theater sticker on the back, it's just pretty cool. So music paper, which I love to include in my junk journals. I made myself a little envelope with another piece of paper. Haven't written anything in it yet, but I kept it unglued so it can be used to write a letter to self. I'm probably going to have quite a bit of travel coming up in my future because of some other projects I'm working on and people I'm connecting with. So this will always be my travel journal. Whenever I go somewhere, I'll bring this journal with me. So I will use the back of this postcard also and fill up all the space that I've left blank. I made a pocket out of this really cool embroidered trim. You see me use it in a lot of my journal flip-throughs. This was my guest pass for the Paramount Pictures lot. So when I went in for the filming day, this is what was issued to me. Pretty fun. I put some watercolor paper in the book just so I could do some drawing. So I drew this while waiting for my COVID test to come back clear before I could actually go to the hair and makeup. I might fill in the rest of this page with drawings, or I might just keep it as this and draw on the back. Pretty little tags that I printed out from Etsy printables. This beautiful droplet is like a peacock colored glass that I found in a $10 jewelry jar. I love thrifting jewelry jars. And I love the design of this sort of Chinese, it's like a Chinese textile design. So I printed out quite a few of those tags that I will write on. More paper from that same printable shop. Beautiful birds. This is an envelope with a peacock card. I bought a bunch of these to use in my journals. I love the way they look. So I will use this as well to write a letter to self on one of my future trips. This is from the paper Cameo. I love her designs. I glued down another piece of that Victorian ephemera. The art easel with the little winter scene spoke to me. This is from Bohemian Bazaar, one of my all-time favorite printable packs. This was in one of my Victorian scrapbooks, and I absolutely adore seeing this mystical woman with her pet owl and her pet kitty, a couple of familiars. She's giving a palm reading. She has her cards on the table. You can tell she's an oracle. So as well as making journals and doing crystal jewelry stuff, I also read tarot cards as another passion. So I felt like including a little piece that honors that mystical craft. It's on the back of some coffee-dyed periwinkle paper, more from the Bohemian Bazaar collection. I coffee-dyed this grid paper using a placemat as a stencil. It's exciting to think that one day I will have this book filled up with stuff that I'm writing and drawing. This beaded trim is just spectacular. I almost didn't want to fold it over, but it stuck out way too far, so it became a beautiful tab, but I just love that beadwork. I'm slowly going through and using all of the hoarded materials that I've been reluctant to part with. Some beads dangling. This is a piece of turquoise from the Sleeping Beauty mine, so that is not dyed or chemically treated. That is just natural and beautiful. Turquoise and blue topaz are my birthstones, so I wanted to put some blue topaz in this book. Here's a postcard from a place closer to home, Moraine Lake in Alberta, Canada. I have a giant print of this that was actually made to be a backdrop for a photography studio hanging in my kitchen. So it kind of feels like this is my home, and it's just blank on the back, but someday I'll write on that. Dangling from it is a beautiful enameled charm that was in a $10 jewelry jar once again. It's either a butterfly or a moth, I'm not sure which, but I just love the colors. That folds out for more journaling space. It would be a great place to collage and glue things down. I kept more of my favorite Victorian ephemera pieces. You'll see these used in a lot of my journals. I like to print them on cardstock to use as tuck spots and things, but those are the originals, and I will eventually write on the backs and use them for journaling. The other side of that watercolor paper. This folds open, writing space. Jupiter is the ruling planet for the sign of Sagittarius, and I was born with Jupiter in Sagittarius, so it's significant for me. This folds open. I love this painting. I've used this work by Matisse in a lot of my work too. I just love the wildcats. They are the vehicle for the goddess Kali. and the goddess Durga, so I see them as significant. I love that washi tape too. Like I said, I just used a lot of stuff that I love in this journal. And not only does this pull out for the picture, but it's also a secret tuck spot. So I could stick a piece of paper back here. The other side of that envelope, I put a bookmark that my grandma gave me into it. She bought this with my granddad on their trip to Egypt. And it's real papyrus, and it shows the hieroglyphic alphabet, which is really cool. The other side of that tuck spot, I put another piece of Victorian ephemera. I kept the pieces that showed art and artistry, so the hand extended in the Victorian symbology represents an extension of friendship. But I love that the hands of the women in these particular cards are actually creating art. This was my favorite design of all of them. I used it in my last journal too in a copy form, but this was the original. I love it because it has kind of an Art Deco shape, like all the gilded stuff looks Art Deco-ish. And I also find it really hilarious that the sentiment on this calling card says, "A foolish son has a grief to his father," which just sounds like such a burn. Like it sounds like you're kind of hinting to somebody that their son is an idiot, but I thought it was funny and beautiful, so I kept it. This is the other side of the Venus of Willendorf page. This was one of my favorite embroidered sari trims, so I used it as a tab. This bookmark was in a birthday card that my mom gave me like decades ago. I think I was still a kid at the time, so I've kept it in here. And that's the end of the first signature. I did two signatures in this one. Started with a beautiful thank you card. This is tissue paper. When I order jewelry making supplies from Fire Mountain Gems, they always have a piece of this at the front of it, and it's so pretty. I just love that color. So I saved it. It gives some crinkly texture. It's pretty. There are a lot of pages in this book from lapidary journals from the 1960s. So this really cool carved hippo with gemstones. Some pretty peacock sari trim. Just a random map page. I kept it because it's India. And even though I was in a cult in India, I still love the country of India. I used this page specifically because of the carved mermaid. I love mermaids. I love anything aquatic. The paper cameo pocket here. That's also salvaged from a Victorian scrapbook. It was really torn up and crinkly, so I glued it down just to keep it safe. This is an ad page from that lapidary journal. I just love all the different beads. Even though it's black and white, it looks really cool. An old business card for a jewelry shop from the 1800s. That was also in the Victorian scrapbook. One of my favorite pieces of sari trim. I'll use this page to collage stuff. I always think bright pink goes really well with blue, so I added that just for the pop of color. And this as well, one of my favorite sari trims. I clipped to it a bead that I found thrifting, just a really pretty water drop sort of a bead. More medieval mirage paper. More medieval mirage paper. This was an offcut from a deck of crystal cards that I had used in my last book. I like this background imagery. I think against the black background, it just looks like jewelry or something, like little precious jewels. And I saved the images of all the 8 immortals from that 1960s lapidary book. Do you say lapidary or lapidary? I've heard both. I kind of prefer lapidary. But anyway, I'll keep them visible, but I'll probably write on the sides and then collage over the backs of the pages. I love how the coffee staining turned out on this paper. So I put the periwinkle paper over the sea blue paper, dyed them both at the same time, and they kind of gave a blended effect, so really cool. I like experimenting with my paper dyes. Lots of pages from art history textbooks. I tried to leave space for journaling too, so lined papers, more coffee dyed grid paper. I made the center a Kandinsky because I adore the artist Kandinsky. I loved he was a theosophist, interestingly enough, so he's also drawn to, or was drawn to, Eastern mystical tradition and the way the movement of colors and the interacting planes of colors can symbolize other states of existence and states of awakening, which is what I strive for in my art as well. The dangle from that is a Tibetan inlay bead with a piece of lapis lazuli. There's another word that you hear pronounced different ways by different people. Lazuli or lazuli. I always say lazuli. I love this antique painting. So beautiful. With the passion flower and the birds. I clipped in some Victorian cards that show girls with their kitties. As a cat lover, I couldn't resist keeping those for my own collection. Fold out paper cameo print. More watercolor paper. It's really heavy, which is great because that means after drawing on it, you can paint it in with watercolor paint and not lose any of the rigidity of the paper, like it won't buckle. More of that pretty beaded sari trim. I love the scene of this person in their boat on the lake. This was also in a Victorian scrapbook. Another ode to Halloween, since that's when I made the book. And I love William Blake's art as well, which is why I picked this. I kind of wanted to cover up the Halloweenish image on the other side just because it's quite dark. But I love the William Blake imagery. When I was in London years ago, I really enjoyed the William Blake exhibit, and I think it was the Victoria and Albert Museum. There's something really moving about his work, especially when you see the originals. And I remember standing in front of this particular piece and just captivated by the angles of that triangle and the hand of his idea of God reaching down from above, and the juxtaposition of whether it could be the triangle, the corner. If it's completed, it would be a square on the side, but the angularness of his creation, but the roundness of his origin. I just thought it was a really cool, symmetrical juxtaposition. More of the bead papers. It could be used as a pocket too. I love the little yawning kitty under the stars and the moon. Malachite structure from that lapidary journal. And then this was funny. This was in the Victorian scrapbook too. It says, SD Piano Company. My grandma Esther loves to play the piano. And whether she likes it or not, some people call her Esty. So I thought this was kind of another funny piece to put in. And then these cute little stamps were part of one of my stocking stuffers from my mom this year. Was a baggie of stamps. She knows I love to use those in collage work. I got some from my Auntie Mary Lynn too, so thank you both for those. I glued these ones in just as a little pocket. And then the back page, you see the other side of the earth that was in the inner front cover. since that's what lined the journal. There. So I kind of like when something carries through from the front to the back. I put this pretty tassel trim just to give some stuff hanging out the side. Use this amazing sari trim. It's really dimensional. I've got a few other pieces of this. I think I have 2 more pieces that will get used in journals that are for sale when the time is right. But yeah, I like to do little collages of fabrics and keep them fun. And usually if I'm making a book to sell, I get really particular about sticking to a theme or sticking to a color scheme. But because this was for myself, I didn't mind clashing and mixing and matching and putting things in that are unrelated to each other next to each other. Let me know how you feel about that, because I might do some pieces for sale that are more loose like this too. Like make some books the way I would make them if I was making them for myself, but to sell. So the closure is just lace that I glued in under all of this stuff. I actually coffee dyed it because it was too clean and too blue to begin with, and I wanted it to have kind of a grungy look so I wouldn't be too precious with it. Anyway, I will eventually use that little pocket to save something. Maybe I'll put these back here just so that there's something in the front and something in the back. But anyway, there you have it. The first little journal that I made for myself that I've actually started to work in. And so I hope this inspires you in your journaling and your crafting and your creating. And I look forward to chatting with you in the next video. Bye for now.